The 60 volt here has been ripping ever since we put a far driver in it, but otherwise it's still pretty stock with a pretty generic battery. But I think it's about time we put in something a little bit more name brand. Now, despite all appearances, I didn't actually go and buy this at Costco. I just have a vinyl cutter and I was bored. Underneath, this is still just the stock 60 volt 15 amp hour battery. And I'm gonna be honest up front, this is pretty good as is.
Especially when you throw a far driver into it. As I'm sure you saw in the last video with this, we finally got the far driver to work. We got an ND 72300 in here with a little bit of modification, i.e. cutting the frame. So this thing has been a pretty solid ripper ever since. And with more control, it gets more power. So previously, when this was 100% stock, I was only getting up to 33 miles an hour. So let's see what we get with the far driver. That right there, 43 miles an hour. Not bad. However, with that new top speed, 10 miles an hour gain, the flip side of that is that the capacity, it's drawing so much that the range is going to be limited, which is also what we're gonna find out right now. Again, previously when this was 100% stock, I got just over 13 miles out of it. I think about 13 and a third. And so far we've only gone about maybe 4.5, 5 miles on this so far, so we'll rip it around a little bit more and see what we get out of it. I'm actually really curious to see how much range we get out of this because we've added so much power. I'm kind of expecting this to drop quite a bit, but we'll see by how much. I also gotta say in general, just how fun and zippy this little thing is now that it's got some horsepower behind it. It's got a little bit more torque, a little bit more top speed, and it's just enough that like, it just adds so much, even to an existing just stock 60 volt battery. It's so much fun. Just goes to show that it's gonna get even more when we put the 72 volt in it. Ooh, yikes, and I just noticed that this bar is now down to nothing. So, time to make it home, if we can. And after all that ripping, that magic number is 10.88, so just a hair under 11 miles and about 2.5 miles off of our total range. That's how much we lost in order to gain all of the acceleration and all the top speed that the far driver provides.
So far, the far driver is a double-edged sword because as you saw, the performance is significantly increased, but at the same time, the range suffers. But all that can be solved, of course, with a bigger battery. Contrary to the appearance, this is not actually a Duracell, this is an Amorg, and it boasts 12 more volts and 5 more amp hours than the stock battery here. What that means is that it has more voltage, so more power, and it has more amp hours, so there's more capacity. So this is a 72 volt, 20 amp hour battery, as I mentioned, from Amorg, and this was most recently thrown into my 48 volt Mototec with Electronco's ETM kit. But when it comes to the 60 volt, it's not as simple as just unplugging the old one and plugging in a new one. There are a few more things we need to consider. So unlike the 48 volt frame here, where it just kind of rests on the bottom and then is held in place with a couple of straps, the 60 volt has its own kind of enclosure going on. So as a part of the battery's plastic enclosure, on the very bottom, you can see there's actually 2 channels on each side. It slides itself in between these 2 metal plates, and then it's clamped on either side by a couple of thumb screws. So first we need to find a better way to secure the 72 volt when it eventually goes in here, and I think the first step is going to be making a fully flat floor so that it can be secured properly. I don't exactly have the correct materials. This is exactly when I wish I had a 3D printer, but looking around, I got a few things sticking up on the wall that could be of good use.
Oh look, it's montage time. I need to think up things to rhyme because I forgot to tell you what I figured I'd do. But who needs to tell you? You can see what I'm doing right. Yes, it's a montage song made with AI because I'm not creative and I forgot to film voiceover.
Well, that's one part done, but that just holds it in place at the bottom. We don't want to have it bouncing around, so I want to actually put a couple of straps over the top of that, and that means drilling into these sides just a little bit to get enough of a hole so that I can fit something through there. Well, after a lot of tedious drilling and dremeling, we finally got all 4 of those slots together, and I fitted them with some leftover rock straps that I have from my moto camping setup, repurposed those as battery straps. I think they'll be perfect because it has just enough elasticity and they're heavy duty enough to be able to hold this battery in place. But before we go putting everything in there is one more thing we need to do before we can connect everything, and that is swap out the connectors. All right, finally got those changed out. That was a little tedious because of the placement of this thing. I didn't really want to get everything off, so I just managed to make it work, but now we can put it in for the final time, get everything all strapped up, and connected. That wasn't too terrible. Fitment is actually pretty nice, and I think it's gonna stand up pretty well. Now I can say I have a premium battery inside of this 60 volt, which I guess is now a 72 volt. And I guess I can't ultimately be ready to ride until I give it a little whack and see what it does. Let's go take it out for a spin.
Well, as with every run on this bike, top speed run is the first thing. Let's rip it. Woo! That was 48 miles an hour. We were downhill a little bit, so I'm going to give it a little extra, but I think on a flat surface, I could easily get 45 out of this thing. This is awesome. You know, we have a pretty solid flat road right here. I actually want to see what happens if I up the far driver a little bit in terms of amperage and see if that increases it just that much more. Whoa! Now that's acceleration! Let's see, 48 still. I guess with the downhill, now it's an actual top speed of 48. I bet I can push that to 50 plus easily, but I don't want to go ham on this thing because it's a tiny bike, and when you go 50 miles an hour on a tiny bike like this, I mean, yeah, I question the structural integrity a little bit. It's also because of this crazy top speed now with such a tiny bike that I'm suited up like I would be on my full-size bike. This really does feel like my baby Sumo is coming to life, especially up here with all these super tight 15-mile-an-hour turns. It's perfect for such a tiny bike like this. The speed is excellent. The added capacity does so much more than just add range, supposedly anyway, but it just gives me that little bit extra breathing room so that I can kind of cruise around like I am right now at like quarter throttle, third throttle. But if I just want to give it a little extra after this corner, I can just whack on the throttle. Woo! As awesome as this is, now the question is, how long can I go for? This voltage display does have a battery percentage on the side, but it does fluctuate quite a bit with how on or off I am with the throttle, so I think now is probably a good time to turn around and make our way back home, so that way we're not stranded many, many miles away from home. Oof, my poor brakes. I gotta get some bigger brakes or something, because this thing really needs to be slowed down. Well, according to this, I have a few more volts left, and look, here's this super steep hill. Now, I struggled up this thing with my stock 48 volt, but this, even with this low battery, is just ripping up it. Look at that, no time flat, we're already at the top. But yeah, now I think I'm getting to the point now where it's saying it's frequently below 60, so I think this is gonna cut off pretty soon. Let's make our way back and see how much mileage we did. Well, the voltage display is now showing 69.5 volts, and I don't think I want to push it any further, but that magic number is 16.3 miles. That's not bad considering how fast I was going and how rowdy this thing is.
That's really not that bad. With the capabilities of this battery pack, you can easily get 7,500 watts of power out of this thing, and that's like 10 horsepower. Now I know that horsepower figure doesn't sound like a lot, but to put it into better context, the Honda Grom here has 9.7 horsepower from factory. Now, as impressive as that is, you have to ask yourself, do I really want that much power? And maybe that answer for you is an emphatic yes, but for me, I'm gonna stick with the 60 volt. Even with 12 less volts in this battery, it's still gonna get me something like 5,000 watts of power. And for the size of this and for the use of this, I think that's plenty. And it's not like this battery is going anywhere. It's gonna continue to live in the 48 volt. It was just a donor for today. But now what I wanna do is set up this far driver best for the 60 volt. I think there's some room for improvement there. So next time we see this bike, we're gonna go through the full far driver setup and tuning process. Be sure to stick around and subscribe if you want to see that. It's really easy to do so, button's right there.